free all tonight.
All right, so I'm jumping back into this. We started the stream a bit earlier. Well, we started the stream a few minutes ago, but it seems it wasn't live on YouTube. But now we are back on, so we're gonna just jump right into this. This is
For those of
Jack.
you that missed it, basically what I was talking about was a lot of I'm on the spectrum, and I've had a lot of naysayers. Like I pointed out that they told me I'd never complete high school, I'd never even enter college, much less get a degree, and I've
Mhm.
used that as motivation. Just a
Awesome,
little recap onto what we were covering.
awesome.
No,
Yes. And I've
it's
actually been an educator in the past, so I completely understand what you were talking about this special degree that they were trying to get you to have. It's where you have completely different courses to where it wouldn't allow you to get into a university. It's mostly just a finishing type of degree saying, yes, I did get through high school, but not enough. It's like a completely separate
it's
type of
it's
degree.
not even it's not even that. It's just, as I said, it's something they give to, mentally handicapped,
Hmm.
so, this way they can walk up with the other students and they don't feel bad about, about the place they're in. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, I understand for them. This is what this, I blame the school system. I blame the current American school system.
Hmm.
It's like they have two places. You're either normal or you're mentally handicapped. There's no in between.
Right.
And it's like I absolutely hate that. It's
Hmm.
like, yeah, okay, I it's like the only reason why they were doing that to me is because I'm horrible with math.
Right.
Okay, so I'm horrible with math, but it's like there's other things that I'm good at. It's like,
Hmm.
can we move past the fact that I'm horrible at math and focus on the other things that I'm good at?
Hmm.
And I blame the school, I blame the current school, I blame the way the school system is right now on that.
Right. Right.
It's it's like the best way I can explain it. It's, school system. It's, I believe the problem started in the 50s. I've found, and that
Hmm.
it was like a factory system where
Right.
you went in. They had all the students. They expected them to be able to learn and be taught the same way. And if
Hmm.
somebody can't be taught or learn the same way, they're an outlier from the rest of the group. And it's
Right.
like they don't like, school system doesn't like outliers.
No, I understand. Those of you just joining us, no, Jen, you're not late. We we started a bit late, but for whatever reason, we were having technical difficulties, and so I restarted the stream. So you're just jumping in right on time. So don't feel like you're late. So this particular, if you're just joining us, this particular episode, we're talking about different myths associated with being on the spectrum and the different things that Jack has had to deal with as he's grown up with this and all of the different obstacles he's had to overcome, and a lot of the myths that are really kind of problematic, that are kind of this outdated type of thinking. Um, yeah, you're right. I mean, our current education system is kind of messed up, and we have
Yeah, it's completely screwed up.
yeah, and we do have a lot of students who are falling through the cracks. And in one particular district, anybody who was on the spectrum, um, they 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 tried really hard to not implement an IEP, which is an individualized education program, particularly
I'm
for.
glad you brought up the IP because I
Mhm.
was just about to point that out. Anybody, just for anybody out there who has an IP, I want to point out if the school wants to change your IP, and you do not have to. You do not have to change that IP. And guess
Mhm.
what? As soon as that your school agrees that by signature, by law, they have to follow that IP. At that
Yes.
point, it is considered a contract with with the U.S. government, with
Right.
the Board of Education, the National Board of Education. If they don't follow the IP at that point, you can sue them. You can sue that school,
That's
and you will automatically win.
you yes. It's you have to show lots of different things. So I don't know if you know about my past, but I taught high school for about 5 years. And I've also taught at university, and I've worked with students who have been on the spectrum. And there's different types of plans. There's the 504 plan, and then there's the IEP. The IEP is ironclad. The 504 is
Exactly.
like a behavior modification, but it's not as binding as an IEP. So I
I
have a,
never I never dealt with the 504. We went.
mhm.
My mother and I went straight to the IEP, so I
Okay.
never dealt with the other one.
The 504 is just mostly just for small modifications in the classroom. The IEP, you 504 is a little bit more loose. There's a little bit of leeway. Doctors aren't too
That's
heavily
probably why.
involved. Teachers can be like, well, we know this worked, but this didn't work. IEP, you have an actual team. You have your doctors, you have the school doctor as far as a psychologist. You have teachers, you have the special education department of the school, all coming together, having to show some kind of evidence. This is what's going on. I know I get this from interacting with the child. And then your actual doctor can weigh in and say, this is what the child needs in order to be
Right.
successful. And they have to take
Yeah.
that in consideration. And then you have your county or your district psychologist who comes in and says, well, I've evaluated the child. So it's as if you have at least two doctors on your side discussing what you need. So you have your psychiatrist and you have your psychologist who's likely done psychometric testing to show that this is going to be the potential issues. And then your psychiatrist is your medical doctor that would have to sign off on it. Then you have the school psychologist that would say, okay, well, I don't find anything wrong with the kid. Then you at least have two other doctors that you can back up and say, these two doctors say so. And then if
Right.
you can raise enough ruckus to
I
do
have
that.
professionals that back up, what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, from a teacher standpoint, I've actually had to, because I have a family member that's on the spectrum, and I've had to go to bat and say, no, I know what the law is. I have a master's in just in teaching. So,
Right.
I
Yeah.
know
No.
what
Yeah.
the law is. So,
Yeah.
you
They'll
can't
they'll give
just,
you they'll
you
give
know,
you grief about, oh, can
mm,
we change this in the IP? And you're like, no, it
no,
doesn't need to be changed. And by
no.
law, I don't have to.
Yes, and
It's like,
that's something that's really upsetting, particularly for parents now, because Betsy DeVos, who's the head of the education department right now, she has removed a lot of the FAQs and the information for parents about IDEA. That's basically the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and so
right.
they've removed all of the basic information and rights that parents need to know about their children who have special needs and are exceptional children.
Yeah.
So they've
My
removed
mother,
that.
my, my mother, as soon as I was declared, with autism,
Hmm.
which was when I was back in high school. I got declared late in life,
Hmm.
but as soon as she found that out, she actually worked in the medical field. She
Hmm.
worked as a pediatric nurse practitioner, which basically means she took care of kids
Right.
uh, for the military. She served 20 years in the military, and
Hmm.
as soon as she found out that I was on the spectrum, she decided she was going to specialize in kids who are on the spectrum. And
Hmm.
she get parents that would come in all the time, and they'd say, "Oh, we're having trouble." And first thing my mother would point out is she'd point out the information about getting an IEP set up.
Hmm.
And a couple of times she had parents where they said, "Oh, school wants to change IEP," and my mother tell them, Does the current IEP work for you?" And
Yes.
if they said, "Yeah," they'd say, "You do not need to change it. By law, they have to follow it."
Right.
And parents didn't even realize that. They didn't realize that under government law, it's a contract.
Yes.
If a school
Um,
refuses to follow it, basically what happens is if school refuses to, each student that's in there that has an IEP, school
mhm.
get extra funding by the government to support that student. If they refuse to follow the IEP, school board's going to come in and say, well, why aren't you following the IEP? And if they say, well, if they're basically going to shrug their shoulders, say,
Mhm.
well, we don't think we have to follow the IEP, school board's going to come and say, well, since you don't have to follow the IEP, we can remove the extra funding that you get for the student.
Hmm. What's really interesting, another thing that parents don't understand, and something that some states are adopting is, let me see if I have one here. they have individualized education account program.
Oh,
So,
I had that. Yeah.
well, no, this is a bit different. This is where you completely, as a parent, you can revoke all rights for your child to get an education in the state, and the state will give you money for you to pay on private
Yeah.
education.
Yeah,
But
my mother found out about that, and she was thinking of doing that when one of the schools I went to
mm,
refused to honor the IEP.
and the problem with this is, if you accept this, then this completely absolves the district from giving your child an
Aid.
education
Yeah.
at all.
Well, no, it completely absolves from any aid as well,
Right. Yes, and the
because
other
at that
thing,
point, it's
well, another thing I want to point out just really quickly is your school district is required by law to meet the educational needs of your child. If they can't do it, they have to pay for private education for your kid. And a lot of parents don't actually understand that. If the district fails to meet the educational needs of your child, if they cannot uphold the IEP, they have to pay a private school to do it for them. So if you accept that money, you are absolving them of any kind of responsibility of educating
right.
your children. So it's like, oh
That was
goodness.
that's the reason why my mother didn't take that. She
Mm-hmm.
wound up finding out that there was a school that specialized in students, because once this problem started happening, this is one of the biggest problems that, this is the reason why the dropout rate is so high,
Mm-hmm.
is because students face this issue. They don't know what to do. They're having so many problems. It's bringing them down. So they're like, why should I even go to school if they're not even going to help me? And
Yeah.
that's what I face. I got in trouble for truancy so many times that finally my mother found out that there was an academy being set up at another high school nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And she told them, look, you either place my son there or I'm going to continue with the lawsuit.
Yeah, and but a lot of parents, like you said, now that DeVos has taken down all of this information off of the education
That's why I don't
government
like her.
website, it's just they are making it exceedingly difficult for parents to know what their rights
Yeah.
are. And you can get your rights told to you by the special needs department at your school, but it's a huge, thick stack of information, and that's quite
Right. Yeah.
overwhelming
It's
to a
like
lot of
It's
parents.
like reading the book of War and Peace.
Yeah, it's kind of a
It's like,
dry
who
read.
wants to go through all that? Well,
So
who wants to go through all that?
yeah,
It's
a
like,
lot of
not
people,
me.
they don't want to go through all that. So, I always kind of say if you have a child that has special needs and you're wondering what your rights are, I certainly do not mind breaking it down for you, particularly now that they've removed that information off the government education Department of
Yeah.
Education website. So let me say hi to people in the chat. Hey, Heat Shield. Hello, YouTube surgeon. How you doing, Mr. P? What's going on? Jen's in the chat. All right. Try a T, y'all. I think that's how you say that, and I'm sorry if that's incorrect. Andrew, Sosh, Jimmy, Nathan. What's up, guys? Cersei. Cersei's one of my patrons. Hello. So, so we've just been talking a bit about some of the myths surrounding the autism spectrum and that sort of thing. I'm anaspeptic, phrasmatic, even compunctious to have caused you such paracombobulation. That's what Mr. P has to say.
That's a good one.
Oh
I
my
I
goodness.
gotta remember that one.
Yeah. Screenshot.
That's a good one. Now,
Oh goodness.
one of the other biggest myths I hate is the whole anti-vax thing. If vaccines cause autism, and I
Mm,
keep pointing out to people, I'm like, there is no correlation between vaccines and
no.
autism.
If anything,
There's actually
autism causes vaccines because we need people with different perspectives in order to solve
right.
problems. So,
I point out there. I was actually reading today, actually, that they think they might have found the big link, to what's causing autism. They
mhm.
think it may, scientists think it may be genetic,
Well,
actually.
yes, I've kind of like hit that particular drum for a while. You look at there's a lot of different factors that can play a role in whether or not a particular thing manifests or expresses. But
No,
usually things happen on the genetic level. I mean, so it would make
yeah.
sense. It would make
Oh
sense
yeah,
that
no, it
things
makes
are,
complete sense to me.
yeah.
Like for a while, they were thinking that it was a chemical imbalance on the brain. To me, even
Mm,
that makes sense.
yeah.
So,
Well,
one of my psychologists, best way he explained it to me, what he thinks is that people who are on the spectrum, their brain runs faster than
mm,
than normal, and their brain is running at such a high speed that the
mm.
rest of the body is stuck playing catch up a lot of times.
Well, I mean, I
To
can
me,
certainly
that's
understand
to
that.
me that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's he basically it's like to me it's like sticking the engine to to a Dodge Viper and a little Datsun frame. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a huge engine, but in the end, that front the car frame is going to be playing catch up to having that huge engine within it.
Right. Well, and to be fair, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I can
Oh,
imagine there's different manifestations of how people present on the spectrum. I mean, you
I'm
have,
doing like
mm-hmm,
the he asked me like how I deal with it. I told him like I'm normally doing three things at once. I
mm-hmm,
can't help it. I'm
mm-hmm.
working on three things at the same time. And normally those three things get finished, but every once in a while I have to drop one thing in order to finish the other two. But that's just the way I am.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes if you got a busy brain, you want to kind of try to catch up with that. I mean, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Um,
No, my mother, as I said before, my mother was a nurse. She this whole thing with vaccines, and there being correlation
mhm.
started with one doctor. I can't remember his name, but I absolutely
Wakefield. I hate Andrew
yes, I
Wakefield.
hate his guts.
He's a dirty word here. It's
I
like
hate his guts because
nobody wants to pull a Wakefield.
he's the whole reason why this whole BS with with a fake correlation started. And
Mm,
then later on, scientists found out that, oh, guess what? It's not true. He faked it, he faked his findings and he didn't do proper research. Well, the problem my mother did an article for the newspaper on one of the military bases we lived on,
mm-hmm.
where she pointed out that that whole thing where he said there's a correlation that wound up being front page news. But
Yeah,
the article retract where
yeah,
scientists came out and said, no, he faked all his findings. That wasn't
mm,
front page. That was
no,
buried several pages down, so nobody saw it. So everybody is
wow,
thinking, oh, guess what? There's a correlation. When in reality, there isn't. And the whole idiot because the whole idiot doctor faked his
yeah.
finding.
Well, I mean, the thing is he was trying to prove that another company's vaccine caused autism, and so he was taking money from this
Right.
company that wanted to prove that this other company was causing this, and um, so the thing with him, and I actually talk about this at length in a few of my other videos. We have the media to blame primarily for anti-vaxxers because of the promotion. Daily Mail, particularly, the Daily Mail
Mhm.
is horrible, absolutely horrible. And they were the ones who spread a lot of propaganda and were fear mongering about
Well,
vaccines from the beginning, and it was
then
awful.
no, celebrities. I blame the celebrities too.
Well,
Like
yes.
what's her name? That's married to Mark Wahlberg now.
Oh God, is it Jenny McCarthy?
Yeah, McCarthy. I'm just like she's a huge anti-vaxxer, and I tell her I'm like the way I look at it, if you're a celebrity,
Mm-hmm.
you need to use that celebrity, to do some positive. Coming out saying
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
vaccines are going to do harm is not only not positive, it's
Yeah,
utterly dangerous.
it is. I mean, we have measles
We have,
outbreak now.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
measles and the CDC or whatever it is, the you
Yeah, the
know
CDC
the
tracks the measles outbreaks. Mm-hmm.
yeah CDC came out saying, yeah, for a long time measles were dormant.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and all of a
they
sudden
had been
it's
pretty
back.
much
It's like,
eradicated. Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
pretty much a dead thing, and all of a sudden it's making a comeback, and I'm like, thank you, Miss McCarthy. You're the reason. You're one of the reasons why it
Yeah.
came back. Thank you.
Yeah. It's pretty awful. So heat shield. So scientist Mel, did you see AGT time? I'm guessing that's America's Got Talent. The last contestant was a young blind man with severe autism, blew the keys off the piano. It was pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing what people
I
can
don't.
do. Our
I don't
brains are
have TV
fantastic
connection,
things.
so I don't watch TV a lot.
That's
But
okay. I don't really watch America's Got Talent, but apparently it's a popular show that I've never seen. So that's okay.
I'll
Oh,
have to check it out on YouTube then.
I'm literally playing Where's Waldo with Mel's background. That's certainly fair because I have a lot of stuff and things. I have a whole
Hey,
section of
Groot,
just stuff over here. I
Groot.
do. I have a Groot right here. I have a Kylo Ren on top of my Mr. Rogers book. You know, so,
I'm more into Groot.
so I
I'm
do
more
have
of a
lots of
Groot
stuff in my
guy.
background. I use it actually to help. Oh, Mr. P, thank you for the super chat. £2, 2 gold British pounds. Everyone say hello to Min, aka Heat Shield. Oh my goodness. I guess that's your new nickname, Heat Shield. Oh goodness. So everybody's being silly. Einstein is licking Wonder Woman. Actually, Einstein is licking R2D2. See, Wonder Woman is
Uh-oh.
here, but see, Einstein's actually licking R2D2, not Wonder Woman.
R2, how dare you? How could you? It's like,
Oh
allow
goodness.
that old man's getting freaky.
Man, Einstein really likes his fictional robots. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
one of the things I love is I've been teaching myself
Mhm.
Cinema 4D, and
Oh,
with
okay.
I originally tried Blender, but
Okay.
that went crash and burn with trying to learn Blender,
Uh-huh.
only because you have to be. I found with Blender, you have to be really good with math, and I'm not. So it's like it went everything. I learned off of the Blender's own videos where they
Uh-huh.
try to teach you, and every time it got to the math portion, it's like over my head. At least with Cinema 4D, it's
Mhm.
a lot easier. If you don't know math, they're just like, oh, just remember these little things. If it's like, if you're trying to get this done, just remember it's this, that you input. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
that's easy. No, and I appreciate programs that are like that, where it's like, normally for something that's heavily math based, they make it
Mhm.
where it's not so math intensive, and I appreciate companies that are like that,
Yes,
where they help somebody out like me.
yeah, because our brains, all of our brains, they're meant to kind of work differently, but that's a good thing
Right.
because we're able to be good at different things. I had horrible, horrible chemistry fear. Horrible, and I would just shut down, and I had a really hard time taking a test, but yet and here I am sitting here with a master's degree in chemistry and I managed to get published. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, so
When I
it's
was in
funny.
high school, one of I had to go to science. We had to memorize the table of elements. I
Hmm.
wound up my instructor wound up the day that we were supposed to take the test. She told me, please leave the room, wait outside, and you're going to have to retake the test. Because by accident, I came in wearing a shirt that had the table of elements listed on the shirt. By accident. No, I seriously,
You
when I
guys were
say it
not
was by accident,
allowed, you
I
weren't
mean it.
allowed to have like a periodic table for your test?
No, we
You
had
just
to
had to,
memorize the periodic table.
oh my
I came
God,
in with
that's
a shirt
horrible.
that had the periodic table literally like stamped directly on the shirt.
See,
So my teacher said, well, you're going to have to leave the classroom and retake the test some other time.
oh my God, I can't imagine making people memorize a thing that's so readily available. You need to understand how to read it. I mean, good
Right.
Lord. I mean, I know
That
most.
I think what she should have handed was a little chart and said, okay, now you have the test where you have to know how to read the periodic table.
I mean, how to read it is more important than memorizing freaking letters. I mean, it's just,
Right.
oh my God.
I
You
mean,
know, your
there's just,
trends, you need to know your trends, metallic, non-metallic,
yeah.
atomic radius,
I mean,
electronegativity. I mean, that's all
unless
important.
you know how to read it, it's just going to be letters to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's so dumb. And why memorize just letters? And they probably, I bet nobody remembered the atomic masses. There's no way you would have
I
remembered all
couldn't
the.
remember.
I mean,
I couldn't remember any of them.
whew,
And I studied.
mm,
I studied for like 2 weeks,
man.
nonstop, and
See, that's just
I
nuts.
couldn't remember all of them.
That's a mean teacher right there. That's just a mean teacher. If
No,
I don't know.
it was
I
actually
would have
pretty
never
cool.
made people memorize the periodic table because that's just ridiculous in my opinion.
School
Hmm.
wanted her to do that, so I mean,
Well, I guess, but I don't. You need to know how to read it, not so much as this is, P is phosphorus. Gosh. Anywho, going back to the topic at hand.
right, right.
All right. What do you feel as an adult on the spectrum, outside of the vaccines and autism thing and the problem with the education system with the U.S.? What do you feel is like the main myth that you absolutely hate and it just drives you nuts as an adult?
The main one. I have to think about that for a minute.
Okay.
Oh, think it's people who think, oh, if you're autistic, that you'll be, with talking with me or talking with anybody on spectrum, you'll be able to
Mhm.
tell. It's not
Ah,
true.
okay.
That's one of the biggest myths I've found.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like
Mhm.
I just got a job working graveyard shifts. Right now it's one of my night offs, but I
Mhm.
work graveyard shifts at a casino
Oh,
near
okay,
where I live.
cool.
I live near Vegas, so I work at one of the casinos now. And I told one of my coworkers, one of the things we have to do is we have to count the chips when we go to take them out to what are called the pits, which are basically the gaming tables where people play
Right, right.
poker, and there's an actual person there, handing out the cards.
Mhm.
Well, me being horrible with math, it's like, counting the chips, for everybody else, they pick it up right away. But I explained to one of my coworkers, I'm like, yeah, it's going to be hard for me to pick up that. And she's
Mhm.
like, I'll help you. She's like, why is it going to be such a hard time for her? I told her, I'm like, I'm autistic. And she's like, seriously? And I'm like, yeah, I'm autistic. She said, if I had never told her, she would never have picked up on it.
And then
Unless I said something, she would never have realized that.
and it's just, hey, factard. He said hi earlier. So it's kind of just one of those things where we got to kind of reiterate the manifestation of autism is a spectrum. It's freaking
Yes.
huge. You can have
Yes.
varying degrees of it. You can have people that are completely, within themselves, and it's hard to draw them out, their
Right.
personalities. So, you can have people that, are just walking around talking, and they just have different perception. You have people that are sensitive to noise and light and,
Oh, I
lots of
have that
activity.
as well.
So,
I think that's the reason I'm so good with audios, because
mm,
I certain when I was in audio, when I was in college, for
mhm,
audio and in getting my diploma at a trade school for audio,
mhm,
every time they'd play what's called the frequency spectrum, which
mhm.
is basically 20 to 20K.
Okay.
Once it got to the higher band near 20K, I'd have to leave the room because
Mhm,
certain at that high pitch, it literally
mhm.
start hurting my ears. And all the
Right.
other students, they'd be looking at me like, "The hell's wrong with you?" Like,
Yeah.
this is bothering you, really? And I told them, like,
Ah.
yes, this is like somebody scratching on a chalkboard for me.
Oh God, that's horrible. But
Yeah.
see, I'm that way when I listen to people eating. It
Oh
makes my
yeah,
skin crawl, and I
yeah,
have to leave the
that
room.
bothers me sometimes.
I'm
For
just
me,
like,
it depends on what they're eating.
the
It
fourth
depends
teeth
on what they're
sound,
eating.
and then the
If
chomping
it's
and the
something, yeah, No, if it's something mushy and you can really hear it, I'm like, but
It's
other than that, I'm like, no, that's like,
I don't like mouth eating sounds, the teeth and the fork, any kind of chomping and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm gonna put in my headphones and go sit somewhere.
yeah.
Just or whatever, you know. But usually, I
No,
don't know. It's
people don't
difficult.
realize, as you said, people don't realize there's an entire spectrum. There's,
Yeah.
I've met people. I actually received a gift from someone. My mother, when we lived in Florida, took me to a convention for people
Hmm.
on the spectrum. It
Okay.
wasn't a convention per se, but I'll
Hmm.
just call it that. And the one gentleman was there. He had an at-home nurse, had an at-home caretaker and everything because he couldn't be left alone. His favorite
Hmm.
thing that he loved to do is trim bonsai plants.
Ah, okay.
So as a gift, he gave me one of the bonsais that he was working on. Sadly, I am horrible with plants. So a couple weeks later, I found out that I accidentally killed the bonsai. And if
Oh
you're watching this,
gosh.
I'm sorry. If you're watching this broadcast, I am very sorry. I didn't mean to kill the gift you gave me. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
I just I it was one, if it had been one of the bonsais that you could leave indoors, I would have
Hmm.
planted it next to my bed and I would have been, watering it every day. But
Yeah.
it was one of those ones that you leave outside and I left it out by the front door. And normally I never left by the front door when we lived there. I would
Yeah.
always leave through the back door. And so I'd
Yeah.
always forget about the plant. So I found out that
You know.
I killed plants and watered enough.
It happens. I have to put
Yeah, as I said
timers in my phone to
before, if
remind me
you're
to do
watching
stuff.
this, sorry. I appreciate the gift though. It's the thought that counts.
Gosh. All right. So let's talk a bit about what are the things that you do to help you kind of cope with the different things that I know sounds and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
what are like some of
Well,
your
I have a
coping
lot of things.
mechanisms? So what are some of those coping mechanisms that help you kind of get through when you're having a oh my god kind of moment?
Oh my God. Well, I have one to help me like every day. I
Hmm.
really don't have oh my God moments really.
Okay.
Every once in a while I do. The only thing, as I say, we can't really handle change.
Hmm.
And say that, for me, that's true to a point.
Hmm.
Like, but I have things help me out every day. Like thank God for digital cell phones now. I use the planner that's in my cell phone. If I have a meeting that's coming up, I will literally put it right into there at that very minute that that they tell me, yeah, we need you to come here at this specific time. I'll put it in the planner,
Hmm.
and I use a Apple Watch now because I run
Hmm.
off Apple cell phone,
Hmm.
and the Apple Watch will literally come up, will go bing and notify me that hey, you have this appointment coming up. Make sure you go.
Hmm.
That's been a lifesaver. I set up, people, if you're around me, people that are around me like almost every day, like especially my coworkers, they know I set up an alarm on that cell phone for everything.
That's okay.
No,
I'm a
as
fan
yeah,
of planning and alarms.
no, as an example, a couple on this past Saturday, I had to handle we had a concert
Hmm.
at the we call it the casino that I work at,
Hmm.
where instead of coming in at midnight for my usual 8 hour shift, I had to come in at 6. I had to check in at 6:30, and the casino is really weird. They
Uh-huh.
want you to come in, and if your shift starts at midnight, you have to put that your ID card. That's how you check in. You slide your ID card in. They want you to do it exactly at midnight, not a minute sooner, not a minute later,
Right.
exactly on the dot. And so, for that, I really don't have an alarm set up for that because,
Uh-huh.
that's my usual shift. But like the 6:30 one, I set up one where it was like, I think 3:30 or 4 o'clock, just to remind me that I had to start getting ready and leave because that
Yeah.
wasn't my usual shift. And then on top of that, I had my regular 8 hour shift on top of that, so I did a 14-hour shift.
Wow, that's a long day.
Well, thank God for overtime. So
Yeah,
it's
there you
like
go.
he told me, I was like, I'm getting overtime. I'm like, I don't care. I was like, okay. At that point, I don't care. I'm like, it's like as long as
Show
I'm getting
me the
overtime,
money.
right? Exactly. That's
Make
what
it
I'm thinking. I'm like,
rain.
yeah. No, so I have that. It's like, and then one other thing I do is when I'm working my shifts, they don't allow us to use our cell phones. We have to be
Ah,
off cell phone because they
yeah,
don't like customers seeing, the cell phones out.
right.
So one of the
Hmm.
things I did is on my cell phone, I found out there's actually a way where you can silence notifications.
Right.
So starting at 10 o'clock at night, my notifications are silenced. Then at 10
Hmm.
in the morning, the notifications come back on.
Right.
And the
Okay.
only ones, the only ones that the phone ignores as far as keep turning off the notifications are the health apps that I have on the
Ah,
phone.
right, right. Well, I mean, that's fair. You know.
The And then the only problem I've found is I have tinnitus. The doctor says
Ah,
that's
okay.
normal for people on the spectrum.
Yeah, I've heard things like that too. I think that kind of goes a little bit with where the hypersensitivity to different
Yeah.
things. Colors, light, sound. I think that's actually I think it's pretty common. So.
And then certain fabric bothers me.
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
first day I got my uniform for my security job, I forgot I when I started my first shift, I forgot to put an undershirt on, and I didn't realize the fabric that the uniform shirt is made out of. I'm
Oh.
actually allergic to
Ah,
something in that
okay.
fabric. So my whole time, I'm literally doing this the entire time.
Oh,
Like,
that's
and
not.
customers are like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I think I'm allergic to this shirt."
Oh, goodness. Give me an extra $15, please, as a tip while I stand here and suffer.
So and I wear a black either long sleeve or short sleeve undershirt depending on the weather.
I
And
see.
recently it's been surprisingly cold here, so I've been going with the long sleeves lately.
Oh, goodness. So I have a question for you.
Huh.
All right.
Yeah.
So you've given us a whole bunch of information about what it's like growing up with this, education, school, um, all of these different things, the vaccine argument, and how that's just absolutely
Yeah.
bonkers. It's
Load of
wrong,
BS. Yes,
completely
load of
wrong.
BS.
And you've given us a bit of insight about, things that you do and that sort of thing. Is okay. So, as a person who is not on the spectrum, what kind of things can we do, to be a bit more sensitive to yourself as being a person on the spectrum? What are things that non-spectrum people can actually do to kind of make you feel more welcome and not exacerbate things, if you
Yeah,
will?
no, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Biggest thing is a little more patience with us.
Okay.
Like
That's
someone
fair.
like me who has the math problems aren't connected with the autism. They said that it's a different, it's a completely different thing, but
Mm-hmm.
the autism has led to that coming out.
Mm-hmm.
For someone like me who has problems with math, it takes a long time for me to count change.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people where I've gone to a fast food joint, and they've given me some weird, it's like $7 and some weird piece of change,
Mm-hmm.
at the end, and I'm there counting. I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, what did you tell me was the change? And I'm there
Yeah.
taking forever because I'm trying to figure out in my mind. I'm like, this is a weird This is a weird number for it to be the change. What equals to this?
Yeah.
And person behind me is over there like, hey, dude, I'm hungry too. Can you hurry up? And I'm
Yeah.
like, so a little patience with us,
Okay. Work on
It's like,
patience, guys.
yeah, I'm like, okay, if you see that the person in front of you is having trouble coming up with the change, I don't mind getting help. For something like that, I don't mind getting help. I
Okay.
mean, if you see that it's taking me forever and you're in a little bit of a hurry, I don't mind if you come up to me and say, "Hey, it's this piece of change and that piece of change and then this one, and
Hmm.
that will equal to it." I don't
Okay.
mind that. I don't mind that
Okay.
because that gets the line moving faster, and I don't mind that.
Okay. But it might be a good idea, just like, hey, can I help you out? You know.
Yeah,
You
no,
know.
if you
Ask
come up to me and
first.
say,
Yeah.
"Hey, yeah, yeah," no, I mean, if you want to
Okay.
come up and say, "Hey, you need a little help with that," I've actually gotten people where they've said, "Hey, you need help coming up with the change?" And I'll look at them and be like, "Yeah, can you?" And they'll be like, "Yeah." And then
Okay.
once I explain to them that that I'm on the spectrum, they're like, "Oh, okay, it makes complete sense, now
Yeah.
why
Okay.
you'd have trouble with that."
So patience, maybe ask politely if is it okay if I
Yeah.
give you a hand, you know. All right, what other
And
things
then
do you think?
if I'm not good at something, it's like, I'll tell people, I'm like, find somebody else that's good at that. It's like something like,
Yeah.
especially I've gotten clients who are like, I need to figure out what this, number turns into, and I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, you need to find somebody else.
So
And
direct communication is very, very important. Say exactly
right.
what you mean, right?
Yeah. And then, I know a lot of us who are on spectrum, we're afraid to make eye contact. I don't have that
Okay.
problem anymore because I've kind of had to teach
Mm-hmm.
myself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the side, I also do product reviews. So
Right.
have had to go to a lot of trade shows and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at trade shows, if you don't make eye contact, that breaks the deal right away. So I've kind of had to teach
I
myself
see.
out of that. But for a
Yeah.
lot of, it's different for me because I can handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people on spectrum, it make keeping up eye contact is just too it's too difficult for them. It's
Okay.
too not difficult, but I'd say uncomfortable. That's the term. It's
It
too
might feel
uncomfortable.
very intense too. You
Yeah.
know, induce
And
a
so
lot of intense
if a
feelings.
person's on, if you know a person's on spectrum, they're not
Mm-hmm.
making eye contact, please do not force them.
Yeah.
That it's that to me that to me that's even worse than the teacher, forcing us to have
Mm-hmm.
to learn the periodic table, by memorizing it. That's even worse because,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're literally that for some people that are on the spectrum, keeping up eye contact is literally painful for them.
Yeah.
And so to force them into something that's causing pain, that's to me, that's
Yeah.
tantamount to abuse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a certainly fair. That's certainly a fair assessment, especially if they're like, I can't do this, and you're pushing
No,
for that.
just
Yeah.
ask them like, hey, is that, just ask them and figure out a nice way of asking them like, hey, is keeping up eye contact, does that
Mm-hmm.
yeah, does that give you issues? If they say, yeah, it bothers me a lot, and if they say
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the spectrum and it just bothers me a lot, say, okay, no, you're fine. I'll be like,
Okay.
you don't have to keep up eye contact.
You know, I know some individuals they have a very hard time understanding um, what metaphors or even nonverbal
Right.
communication. And so,
I had
direct
the
communication is extremely important. You say, like, sarcasm was a very bad idea for some
Yeah.
people. Um,
Right. No, it's like it took me the longest time to learn body language.
hmm
I had I had serious issues with that even.
hmm
It
I
was
mean,
like,
it's just not
my
ingrained
mother actually
with
helped me.
everyone.
Yeah, no,
hmm
it's something you have to learn when you're a kid, and for some it's hard to learn that.
Yeah.
And for the body language thing,
hmm
a lot of times that has nothing to do with the being on the spectrum at all. It's just
hmm
that some kids, they never pick up on the body language thing.
hmm
Just it just happens.
And coincidentally, this can cause social issues, especially
Right.
if you have a child who's not picking up that this make I'm angry and I don't want to talk to you, and they
Right.
keep pushing, then they have a harder time making friends. And coincidentally, I believe it's Asperger's is a form of autism where that is directly an issue is the social issues of not
That
understanding
that's
nonverbal
what I have.
communication. Oh,
That's what I
okay.
actually specifically have is
hmm
Asperger's syndrome.
Hmm. And
And
so, it's important to have a bit of patience even with that. So,
right,
being
no, and
very
then
direct in communication is very, very helpful from what
and
I've
I
seen
just
on that.
add for those of you in high school that are
Hmm.
watching this, I want to point out something. That kid that's the outlier in class that's like, not even in goth clothing or all that, but is considered the weird kid, out of everybody in the school. Please go up and talk to him. Try to become friends with them because
Yeah.
guess what? He might be considered weird because he is on the spectrum. And
Yeah.
nobody ever thought of that. Nobody wants to talk to the kid. He has trouble making friends.
Hmm.
I went through that, and it was worse for me because for most of my life, my mother was in the military, so
Ah.
we'd be there for like 3 or 4 years at one
Hmm.
place. All of a sudden, my mother would get orders, and we'd have to transfer to another place.
Hmm.
And for someone like me, who it's very difficult to make friends, that made it even more difficult.
Yeah.
So please, if you see a kid there and everybody's like, yeah, that's the weird kid, just look at them and be like, you know what? I'm going to go and try and make friends with them. You know what?
Yeah.
You are going to brighten up that kid's day, if not their
Right.
life.
And kindness is free, you know.
Yes. I always tell
Default to
people, I
kindness.
always tell people there's not enough free things in this world, but kindness is always free.
And
It doesn't
random
cost anything to be kind.
acts of kindness can, especially when you're dealing with people who are on the spectrum, they do have a high rate of depression and anxiety
Oh
that
yeah.
kind of go along with that. And part of that is social issues. And so default to kindness, just you don't know what a person's going through. You don't know if they're on the spectrum. You don't know if they have
Right.
depression or anxiety. And your random act of kindness might
You
be
know,
just what they need to kind of get them through the rest of the day or even the week, you know?
I used to teach science at a private school for
Hmm.
kids with high IQs. And I used to tell the kids, like, that kid that you go to talk to that everybody looks at as being the weird kid, you have no clue what their life is like. Their life could be in complete turmoil. They might
Hmm.
be thinking, you know what? Nobody likes me. I'm just a drain on this world. And they might be thinking of just removing themselves from existence.
Yeah.
And you going over there and talking to them and them, and you becoming their new friend, that you will become their motivation for sticking around.
Yeah.
And you never know. You in the end, you could be saving that person's life just by being nice to them.
Yeah. I always try to again kind of push the idea that, kindness is free. It
Yeah,
really is. And you don't know what a person's going through. And that one simple thing that you do just by saying, "Hey, how you doing?" or "You look nice today. I just thought I'd tell you that. I hope you have a good day." Smile, even a smile, it can change
right.
the direction of a
Kindness
person's
can
day.
change the world.
It
Another myth
can.
that I found with autism, people keep saying, "Oh, there's more cases of autism, cropping up. Autism is becoming, more rampant." And I point out people, I'm like, it's not actually. It's not becoming more rampant.
Yeah.
It's just that now the experts, who specialize and say coming out saying, yeah, you are on the spectrum. They
They're
are. It's
they're
now
detecting it earlier,
yeah, and
with
better.
better methods. Yeah, with better
Yeah,
methods.
it's my mother used to teach school at school as well before I was born, and she'd say half of her class was full of kids that they considered mentally handicapped at the time,
Yeah.
but now they would list them as being on the spectrum.
Right.
So it's like even, and that
Hmm.
was back in like the 70s or something like that. So I mean,
Yeah.
and consider that within the time period, 70s to now. That's a short time for detecting that to have improved. Considering
Hmm.
that's a short time.
Yes. And also a lot of kids have been diagnosed with like ADHD who've
Yeah,
actually been on the spectrum. I don't even know if I'm on the spectrum or not. I've never actually been tested, but
I
I
I
have
was
family
diagnosed.
members that are. So I'm like, maybe I'm on the spectrum too, but it's just I've never been tested, but you never know. And so it's it's not, and I kind of get sick of this idea. I was like, oh, well, when we were talking about the vaccine thing, your child can die of measles, you know,
Exactly.
so
But
what
they
if they're
cannot
on the
die of
spectrum?
they cannot die from being on the spectrum.
Yes, so it's just exactly, that's I think it's fantastic to have people on the spectrum because they're able, particularly in the STEM fields, because they're able to look at a problem from a completely different perspective and come up with a whole slew of completely different ideas nobody else would have thought of before. So
My favorite
it's important.
video is from Penn and Teller,
Hmm.
and it's from a TV show. Is it okay to have to like curse a little bit here?
Yes, that's
Do
fine.
you mind?
I don't mind.
It's from because the reason is their TV show they used to have on Showtime was called Bullshit, where
Yes.
literally they pointed out the bullshit and all this
Yeah.
type of stuff. One of the things they talked about was they covered the correlation between
Yeah.
autism and and one thing they put the way they covered, they're like, okay, so even if it does cause it, it's not going to be it's not going to be life threatening, even if there was there was a cause
Hmm.
that did cause autism. But they
Yeah.
said, let's take a case where one of the diseases that
Was previously
vaccines does
eradicated.
help
Yeah.
eradicate. So they have a set of bowling pins. They have two sets, one on
Hmm.
each side, and they have a line right down the middle.
Hmm.
One side, there's nothing blocking the bowling pins. On the other, they put up like this plastic screen to block the bowling pins. And they said, and for the ones that's on side, they're like, these represent the kids that are unvaccinated. So they toss a ball into the bowling pins. All the pins get knocked down. And they said the reason why that happens is because there's nothing to protect the pins. Same way that unvaccinated kids, there's nothing to
There's
protect
nothing to
them.
protect them.
And then they took a bunch of balls, tossed it over onto the corner where there's the plastic blocking the bowling pins. And they said, if you look at it, it's like, yes, there are a couple of bowling pins that got knocked down,
Hmm.
but for the most part, most of the bowling pins stayed up. And that's because we had this plastic barrier protecting them the same way
Hmm.
that the same way vaccines act as a barrier between diseases
Right.
and people. And they point out that people, and then they point out that people say, "Oh, I get sick right after right after I had the vaccine, I got sick." No, the vaccine did not make you get sick. It brought
No.
out you were already starting to get sick, and the
Yeah.
vaccine helped pull that out. And
Right.
people don't realize it's not designed to keep you from getting sick. It's designed to help your body get over being sick easier.
Right. Right. Goodness. So, heat shield. I'm not able to pull up that link that you sent, but you can send it to me later. But yes. So essentially, what we're trying to get at with this particular live stream is to talk a bit about the myths and how, what it's like to grow up on the spectrum and those particular myths that are easily busted, but also what we can do as people, have a bit more patience, offer to help, give a hand if you need to, talk to the person that you think is a bit different, at work or at school. Just sit down, have a cup of coffee with them. Just engage and, default to kindness. So we're coming up on about an hour here. This has been awesome to have you here, Jack.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. I'm so
I
glad
just
we got
wanted
to hear a bit of this.
The reason why I wanted to do this was because I want to point out that yes, we are on the spectrum, but we all have one thing in common. We are part of the human race. And as that we should have the same respect and kindness for each other as being a part of the same race.
Absolutely. And so it's really important that we understand there's a reason why we have people who are on the spectrum because we need diversity, not only in the population biologically, but also mentally, because the more brains we have that can see things in different ways, the better our world we can make it, the more progress we can have, particularly in science, tech, engineering, arts, and mathematics. There's so much to be gained
Well, and
from
not
having
only
varying
those
perspectives.
fields, not only those fields. I was watching. being in music, I watch a lot of interviews. Before he passed away, David Bowie actually came out and he says, I got at that time it had been recent. So he said, well, recently I got myself, I went and got a psychological test done. And he said, he goes, you know what? He goes, for those of you who are on the spectrum, he goes, most people might not understand what that term means. And as soon as he said that, I was like, I completely understand what you're saying. He's like, for those of you on the spectrum, well, guess what? I'm on it too. We share something in common. So even, there are stars that have never been tested that I think were on spectrum. Like, Prince was always considered weird. As you can see, I have one of his records behind me with the Batman logo.
Oh, okay.
But,
cool.
But no, I always thought, I always thought there were people out there that were always considered weird, like Prince, Einstein, who you have behind you.
Yes.
I always thought I think the reason why they're weird is because they were on the spectrum, and at the time that they were on it, it wasn't a recognized thing, so they were just listed as being weird.
Yeah.
But they used them being weird to their advantage.
Yes. Let's all be weird together.
Yeah, that's the main reason I love Prince. He was like, he had these songs where he's like, hey, I'm weird, you're weird. Hey, you know what? Let's
Everybody's
have a party.
Weird.
Let's be weird together.
Let's have a weird party. Embrace our differences and our weirdness.
Yeah. No, and I love artists that are like that. That's that's another reason why I love Dave Bowie. He's like, what? He always said, a friend of mine who's a transgender singer. She nicknamed David Bowie the Saints of the Outcasts.
Saints of the Outcast. I love it.
Because he always supported, he was one of the first people that always, came out and supported people that are different. I mean, especially if you look at the Ziggy Stardust days, he wore all the makeup and everything.
It's amazing.
And people were wondering, is he straight? Is he gay?
It's like it didn't matter. He's David Bowie. He's his own person.
He's just like, and he would say in interviews, he goes, it doesn't matter. He goes, what matters is, listen to my music. That's all that matters.
Exactly. Oh, well, Heat Shield put a link in the chat to the boy that was playing the piano tonight. So thank you for that. I will click on it a bit later and have a look. So,
I'll shoot it over to me and then I'll have a look too. Because I've never seen that.
Okay. Well, I will do that. Let me copy.
The one I was impressed is one where the guy turned the entire auditorium into one large piano. I thought that was impressive.
Wow. That is pretty impressive.
He literally had strings going from the stage all the way to like one, like an area in the back of the auditorium.
Huh. Wow. Well, I guess we're coming up on an hour now, so it's probably time for us to just go ahead and wrap this up. But thank you, Jack, for being here. I'm so glad we got to have this chat and talk about
more than happy. No, thank you for having me. I'm more than happy.
Yay, And thank you guys in the chat for hollering at us and chatting with us back and forth. They've had their own. The side chat's always interesting on my shows. You never know what's going to go on there, but it's always cool, and the people tend to be pretty kind.
For anyone wondering what I'm up to, I am on Twitter. You can find me at capital JACK Jack X, capital X, all one word, _13. I'm available on Twitter.
Jack X _13.
Or just look up on her follower list, and you'll find me in her follower list because I do follow her on Twitter.
I'll put a link. Yes, and I follow you back, so that works. So I'll put a link to your Twitter in the description so they can find you there as well. All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys for being here. I'm going to play my patron video and then my video to sign us out. And if you have any suggestions for the show, or if you want to pop on and just have a chat over some kind of BS topic with the myths, busting those in autism, find me on Twitter, leave a message in the comments, or you can go on my website, ScientistMel.com, and drop me a line there. Thank you guys for being here.
And then if anybody has any questions, like if they have any further questions about me being autism and any questions, if you find me on Twitter, feel free to send me a personal message and I'll try and answer you, as soon as possible.
Okay. Well, you guys have a great night. Bye.
You take care. Yeah. Bye.